It was a crisp autumn afternoon, and the city buzzed with the energy of people hurrying to their destinations. The air carried the scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor and the faint aroma of coffee wafting from open cafe doors. The golden leaves that adorned the trees were beginning to fall, carpeting the busy sidewalks with their vivid hues. Amidst this flurry of activity sat a boy named Ezra, tucked into the corner of a bustling city square. Ezra was a quiet, observant boy of 16. His clothes were worn thin, his shoes scuffed beyond repair. His skin, kissed by the sun, bore the marks of a life lived outside, rough and calloused but resilient. For as long as Ezra could remember, the streets had been his home. A tattered backpack and a faded jacket were all he had to his name, and the people rushing past him rarely spared him a second glance. He had grown accustomed to it, the feeling of being invisible. As he sat near the entrance of a quaint little cafe, Ezra watched the world go by. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just people watching, as he often did to pass the time. His stomach growled faintly, a constant reminder of the gnawing hunger that had become his companion. Yet, he made no move to ask for help. Pride, or perhaps stubbornness, kept him rooted in his spot. Inside the cafe, a man named Nathaniel was finishing a phone call. Nathaniel had the polished look of someone who had his life together. He wore a tailored navy suit, a leather briefcase resting beside him. His sandy blonde hair was neatly combed, and his polished shoes gleamed under the cafe's warm lighting. Nathaniel was a man on the move, always busy, always preoccupied. As he ended his call and rose from his seat, Nathaniel checked his watch with a slight frown. He was running late for an important meeting, but that wasn't unusual for him. Juggling his responsibilities as the CEO of a burgeoning tech company often left him with little time to breathe. He gathered his belongings in a hurry, tucking his wallet into his coat pocket as he adjusted his scarf. Ezra's attention was drawn to the man as he exited the cafe. There was something about him, his hurried movements, his distracted demeanor, that piqued Ezra's curiosity. As Nathaniel stepped onto the sidewalk, his wallet slipped from his pocket and landed with a soft thud on the ground. The man didn't notice. He continued walking, his phone now pressed to his ear again as he spoke in hushed tones. Ezra hesitated. He had seen the wallet fall, its contents partially spilling out. Instinctively, his gaze darted around. No one else seemed to notice. He stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the wallet. His first thought was survival. A wallet like that could mean a meal, maybe even a warm place to sleep for a night. But as he knelt to pick it up, something stopped him. A photograph peeked out from the leather folds, half exposed. Ezra's fingers trembled as he pulled it out. The boy in the picture was young, perhaps 8 years old, with dark, curly hair and a bright, innocent smile. His heart skipped a beat. There was something hauntingly familiar about that face, though Ezra couldn't quite place why. For a moment, he was frozen in place, staring at the photo. Memories he had long buried began to stir, fleeting images of laughter, a warm embrace, and a house that felt like home. But they were blurry, like a dream he couldn't fully recall. Nathaniel, now several steps away, finally realized his wallet was missing. He turned around, his brow furrowed as he scanned the ground. His eyes landed on Ezra, who was still holding the wallet. Quickly, Nathaniel walked back toward him. "Hey," he called out, his tone polite but firm. "That's my wallet." Ezra looked up, startled out of his thoughts. He stood, clutching the wallet tightly. Nathaniel noticed the boy's hesitation, his intense focus on the photograph. Something about the boy's expression made Nathaniel pause. "Thanks for picking it up," Nathaniel said, extending a hand toward the wallet. His voice softened when he saw the boy's trembling fingers. Ezra didn't respond immediately. His gaze shifted from the photograph to Nathaniel, his heart pounding. "This picture," he began, his voice barely audible. "Who is this?" Nathaniel's smile faltered. He glanced at the photograph Ezra held, his own heart sinking. A deep sadness clouded his eyes as he answered, "That's my son, Leo. He's been missing for 8 years. Ezra's grip on the wallet tightened. His mind raced as fragmented memories began to piece themselves together. "Leo," he repeated, the name tasting both foreign and familiar on his tongue. That's my name. Nathaniel's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. He studied Ezra closely, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. The boy in front of him, could it be? For a moment, the world around them seemed to blur. The noise of the bustling street faded into the background as Nathaniel and Ezra locked eyes, both searching for answers in each other's gaze. "Your name is Leo?" Nathaniel asked, his voice shaking. He took a cautious step closer. How old are you?" 16, Ezra replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He was trembling now, the weight of the moment threatening to overwhelm him. I think I'm your son." Nathaniel's knees nearly buckled. He reached out, his hand hovering near Ezra's face, as if he was afraid the boy might disappear if he touched him. "Leo," he murmured, tears welling up in his eyes. "It's you." "Oh my God, it's really you?" Nathaniel couldn't believe it. For 8 long years, he had held on to the hope that his son, Leo, was alive. There were days when hope felt like a cruel burden, but he had refused to let it go. And now, here he was, standing before him, older, worn by life, but unmistakably his son. Ezra, or Leo, stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The man's reaction, the raw emotion in his eyes, was almost too much to bear. A part of him wanted to run, to deny what was happening, but another part, a deeper, quieter part, longed for this moment. The truth he had been searching for all his life was suddenly within reach. Nathaniel, still trembling, gently placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. You're alive," he said, his voice breaking. "I've been looking for you for so long. Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you." Leo's eyes filled with tears. He had no memory of this man, not clearly, but there was something familiar in his touch, in the way his voice quivered with emotion. "I don't remember much," Leo admitted, his voice cracking. "But I think I remember you." Nathaniel smiled through his tears, a bittersweet expression that carried both joy and pain. "It doesn't matter right now," he said. "What matters is that you're here." By now, passers-by had started to notice the emotional reunion. Some slowed down, curious about the scene, but Nathaniel didn't care. His focus was entirely on his son. "Come with me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Let's get out of here and talk somewhere quiet." Leo hesitated, his instinct to distrust people warring with the strange sense of comfort he felt in Nathaniel's presence. But something inside him told him to trust this man, so he nodded. "Okay." Nathaniel guided Leo to his car, a sleek black sedan parked a few steps away. He opened the door for him, and Leo climbed in, still clutching the photograph. As they drove through the city, silence filled the car, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. Both of them were lost in their thoughts, trying to process the enormity of what had just happened more.